This is 2019's Polar. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to a mansion in the forest somewhere in Chile, and Michael is enjoying the finer things in life. Fantastic day with Cindy, but he doesn't see the assassin getting his weapon ready in the woods near him. Facundo watches the man through his scope, and his two associates sneak up to handle things at a close distance. Cindy gets out of the way at just the right moment, and Hild and Alexei finish things. Soon, Carl arrives with the chopper, and everyone packs up and leaves after a job well done. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Duncan is checking into his doctor's appointment, and we see that he's sustained quite a few injuries over the years. Duncan is a walking bag of pain and injuries. I feel like any real doctor would be a little more concerned. Wow, this doctor has no boundaries. He went straight in for a prostate exam and grabbed food out of the fridge after getting his finger out. There's a health code violation here somewhere. Duncan tells the doctor that he's actually retiring now, and the doctor warns him that quite a few people end up getting hurt more after they retire. After the doctor appointment, Duncan goes to his accountant, and it looks as though he's about to gain over $8 million when he retires in 14 days. In the city, Michael's funeral is happening, and Vivian gets a call from Duncan, who is watching from across the street. The two of them meet up for drinks, and Duncan asks what happened to Michael. She hands him quite a few documents that she's gathered as intel, and Duncan turns down the opportunity to pull a revenge hit for the company. Vivian tells him that the boss won't accept a refusal, and he simply walks away. In the world of assassins, I don't feel like it's a smart thing to turn someone down, especially the head of an assassin organization. At least Duncan lives in the most inconspicuous state possible for a hitman: Montana. People actually live there. Once Duncan gets back to Montana, he shops around for some groceries, rents a movie, and stops to check out a dog that's up for adoption, which he ends up taking home. Things are pretty quiet in Duncan's life, but at night, Duncan is plagued by some nightmarish visions. It's so bad that he's startled by the dog licking his feet, and he has to bury the dog the next morning after reacting a little too instinctually. Once that's done, Duncan notices Camille having trouble chopping wood across the river, and he heads into town to buy some fish now. Once home, he receives a message from his boss, but he steps outside when he hears Camille come home. She notices that he's chopped up all of her wood for her. "All right, creepy old man from across the river. Now I know that he's watching me, and I would definitely move now." Soon, Duncan finally calls Vivian back, but he keeps telling her that he won't take the job. It turns out that Vivian is working for the same guy that hired Facundo and the others, Mr. Blutt. Later, Blutt meets up with other associates in Washington, D.C. and shows off some of his private collection of swords before talking about business. It turns out that Blutt runs the Hitman organization, and his plan for making money is by killing his agents before they can retire and receive their pension that was built on their investments in the company. Hey, this sounds like something real companies would do. That's how all these insurance companies can keep going by never paying anything out. The next day, Duncan heads to Belarus, where he gets a little special attention from Evelina, and he tries to take her and her son away for a trip before she shuts him down. Later, Duncan heads to a local hotel under the cover of being a maintenance guy, and he ends up taking out the target that Vivian was trying to get him to accept the job for. Once the job is done, Duncan finds that his file is in the room, and he was the target all along. With that in mind, he tells Vivian that he's already completed the job, and he hopes that she had nothing to do with him being set up. Duncan quickly changes his clothes and has Evelina and her son come out of the nearby room as part of his cover. Once outside, he pays Evelina for the extra danger, and she is furious that he put her and her son at risk. Vivian rushes into Blutt's office and tells him that his plan failed horribly. As an answer, Blutt assures her that he'll send in the A-team to take out Duncan before his birthday retirement. Facundo and his team go to Duncan's accountant to find out as much as they can about Duncan, and they take him out after figuring out where Duncan stays permanently. Meanwhile, Duncan is shopping at the general store, and he finally meets Camille. He notices that Camille is extremely jumpy, and she rushes out of the store after getting startled. Down in Miami, Cindy and the team try one of the locations they got from the accountant, but the man staying there harasses and hits Sydney before the rest of the team comes in and takes him out. That accountant had fantastic backup plans. He's literally getting paid rent from creepy people who agree to answer to Duncan's name. Back in Montana, Duncan and Camille run into each other at the diner, and they have a pleasant conversation with the worst small talk ever. Camille tells him how she loves the peace where they live, but Duncan keeps noticing how Camille jumps at the slightest sounds. The next day, the A-team tries out another one of Duncan's fake addresses, and once again, they don't leave any witnesses. Camille takes her camera into the woods the next day, and she photographs a beautiful owl before she heads back into town to show Duncan some of her photos. Camille seems fascinated by Duncan and his culture, but she doesn't get much truth out of him. Ha! The last location was a fake one too. Meanwhile, Duncan is giving deadly lessons to the local kids in their school, and I'm amazed that Duncan didn't have kids yet. These kids are going to go home with a whole new perspective on life, and the teacher is just standing back there in the back, wondering if she's going to get fired for allowing this visit. After the class, Duncan tells Camille that the lessons went very well, and they swing in silence on the playground. Meanwhile, the A-team is searching through all of the accountant's papers for another location for Duncan, and Junkie Jane thinks that they're wasting their time. Back in Montana, Duncan brings Camille a present, and it's a whole handgun. That night, Blutt talks dirty to his girlfriend, Hilda, but right after that, Junkie Jane finds a rather interesting receipt, and the team piece together that Duncan must be in Montana. Hooray for Junkie Jane! She was a better detective than the professional assassins. The next day, Duncan goes out into the woods with Camille to teach her to shoot, but Camille is having a really hard time even holding the gun. She breaks down in tears and drops the gun, and Duncan can tell that this isn't the right gift for her. They head back to Camille's cabin, and she prepares him a drink with bourbon and maple syrup. While they sip on their drinks, she tells him about a man who assaulted her years ago, and she's dreamed of the moment where she gets to have her revenge on him. She asks Duncan if he thinks it would be easy to kill someone, and after remembering when he killed Santa, he assures her that it wouldn't be easy. The next day, Duncan goes to the store to get Camille another gift, but Facundo and Carl spot him leaving. On his way home, Duncan stops when he sees Cindy having car trouble on the side of the road, and he gives her a ride to his house. I'm sorry, he's supposed to be this crazy awesome assassin, but he can't see past Cindy's bad acting? Cindy tells Duncan that the earliest a tow truck can come out is in the morning, and he lets her stay on the couch that night. She comes on to him later that night, and while they have their fun, Facundo and the rest of the team take up their spots and move in slowly. Just as Facundo takes the shot, Duncan throws Cindy into the shot's path, and after taking her out, Duncan goes after Facundo next. You know what's even more amazing? The fact that Duncan is completely bare-skinned laying in the snow while taking up Facundo's weapon. Carl thinks that he's sneaking up on Duncan, but Duncan is once again 50 steps ahead of him, or actually behind him. Now it's just Hilda and Alexei, and Duncan wants the name of their employer. Well, Hilda doesn't last very long, and Duncan heads into the little town's hotel where they had been staying. Once there, he finds Junkie Jane's body in the corner, and he searches for Alexei. Just as he goes to leave, Junkie Jane thinks that Alexei is there, and she says that he went to pick up Camille. The one time that this dude goes to make a friend, and she gets kidnapped. Fantastic. Duncan goes to find Camille, but Alexei has already taken her. Back in Blutt's office, he throws a very big fit and smashes all of his fragile things. Vivian tells him he should have just listened to her and paid Duncan his retirement, but Blutt isn't listening. He's furious, and he's out for blood even more than before. Duncan takes a trip to Detroit, and he meets up with Porter in a small bar where he's singing really bad karaoke. Porter already knew that the agency had tried to kill Duncan twice, and Porter tells him about all the fine print in his contract that says the company gets his entire pension if he dies before retirement. He says that Blutt and everyone responsible is probably in Blutt's mansion. Ah, you can't trust anyone! I'm not a hitman, but even I know that rule. Porter poisons Duncan with some sort of contact roofie. Stop trusting people! Duncan wakes up in Blutt's torture chamber, and Blutt assures him that he's in for a terrible time. He gives Duncan a nice little lesson on the history of torture, and he tells him that he's got 4 days left to torture him before his birthday. Then, Blutt decides to show pictures he took of himself doing terrible things to Camille, and he gets started on the very long torture session. At the end of day 1, Junkie Jane gets Camille really high, and Blutt leaves Duncan on the floor in his torture chamber. Day 2 comes around, and Blutt puts on the same bagpipe music before getting started with the tedious torture session. This all repeats the next day, and Duncan is getting tortured so much that Blutt breaks his favorite knife. Duncan uses the piece of the knife that broke off inside him to pick the lock on his restraints, and on day 4, Blutt's men come in to get him ready for another torture session, but Duncan is ready to go. Duncan takes out all of the guards, and Blutt is questioning whether or not he wants to open the door now. Duncan shuts down the power, and as the door opens, Blutt can hear the bagpipe music playing from inside. Now, Duncan takes out the guards one by one, and Blutt makes a hasty retreat. Duncan makes his way through the facility, but he's not going without taking a bullet or two. Duncan ends up getting hit quite a few times, but it's apparently going to take more than a few rounds to put him down. These guards keep coming in for more punishment. It's like that's all they're there for. Eventually, he makes it to an old friend's place, and he uses her phone to call Vivian. He tells her that he'll trade himself for Camille, but no matter how much of a good deal Vivian thinks it is, Blood isn't up for negotiating. In the morning, Duncan wakes up to find that he's been bandaged and doctored back to a little bit of health, and after another short rest, he talks to Jasmine about using her small arsenal to handle business with Blood. They pack up all of her artillery, and Duncan goes on his way to meet with Vivian for an exchange. Vivian and Alexei pack up all the bad guys and weapons they can find, and they go on their way next. Duncan gets to the warehouse first, and he sets up all of the big guns to surprise Vivian and her crew. Well, nothing goes as planned for Duncan, or so Vivian and the others think. Why does anyone think that they're actually pulling a fast one on this dude? The only one that can say they beat him would be Old Man Porter. Duncan tries to give Vivian one more chance to walk away, but she thinks that he's just losing his touch. As the guys move in to end Duncan, he activates his tech and opens fire on everyone with his tracking laser gloves that work with the artillery that he's set up. I want those gloves. After watching everything from his office, Blood really starts to panic, and he calls as many guards as he has left to be by his side. Blood thinks that he's ready for Duncan, but when Duncan arrives, everybody starts shaking in their boots. When the guards see Duncan slowly walking into the mansion, they abandon Blood and run right past Duncan as he walks into the office. Once Blood is face to face with Duncan, he arms himself as well as he can, but Duncan makes quick work of him. With Blood's head thrown out the window, Duncan heads out to find where they kept Camille. He finds her strung out on Junkie Jane's couch, and he carries her out of the mansion. He takes her back to his cabin in Montana, and he watches over her as she rides her system clean. Wow! Camille went from being Junkie Camille to pulling all sorts of newspaper clippings and receipts out on Duncan's bed. It turns out that she was actually the girl that's tied to his nightmare. He killed her family during a hit, and she has been waiting for this chance. Oh my god, he was the guy that messed her up with the trauma. This took a turn. I can honestly say that I'd be happy with any kind of ending after this point. Great twist! Duncan sits and listens to Camille's testimony, and she asks why he didn't kill her with the rest of her family. Duncan tries to explain that he was given the wrong info, and her family dying the way they did was never supposed to be part of the plan. Camille doesn't want to hear it though, but it turns out that the charity that he's been donating a lot of money to was Camille's schooling, and that's how she was able to find him. Duncan tells her that he's okay with her pulling the trigger, and after he shuts his eyes, she does just that. She shoots behind him though, and she asks how to find out who wanted her father dead all those years ago. Duncan says that he tried to already, but he couldn't find a way. The two of them stand in silence on the porch, and then the credits roll. This was actually a win for a movie, and the style behind it was really cool. Mads Mikkelsen is always a hit, and the action was pretty fast-paced. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.